So welcome everybody to the last webinar of our Kinesis project seminar series Spring 2023. I'm really glad to introduce Kalina, Mareike, and Ingrid that are presenting this webinar entitled Should I Stay or Should I Go? Research on Students' Perception of Livability in Zeeland. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Okay, so the research we want to discuss today is from the Netherlands. And for those who do not know where that is, it is a very small part of Europe, as you can see over here. Let me tell you about a couple of things about the Netherlands. It's around 17 million people who live there, relatively small. And besides people, you can see bicycles, some 20 million approximately. The Netherlands is a small yet diverse country. There are lots of different cultures and nationalities. And another fact is that the Dutch teaching style is interactive, student-centered, and the Dutch are known for being direct. And they say that the Netherlands is one of the safest countries in the world, and it probably belongs to the top 10 of the happiest countries in the world. But let's find out. In the southwest of the Netherlands, you find the region Zeeland. And this is where HZ is located. HZ is a University of Applied Sciences. It's well known for a stunning countryside, coastal villages, amazing beaches, and living in this province, you will find like a combination of musea, local markets, regional food, music festivals, and lots more. The education is offered in Vlissingen and in Middelburg, and we offer like programs that focus on practical application of arts and sciences. Skalda is a school for vocational education, providing 17 disciplines such as in education in sports, exercise, dance, but also in shipping and transport and logistics. It is organized and housed on a very small scale. Okay, so now you know where Zeeland is. Today, we will discuss the research we've conducted on students' perceptions on livability in Zeeland. By introducing the research question, we will explain the methods we used and also discuss the results based on the research we did. And finally, we come up with a conclusion. But first, perhaps let's start with why. What we see is that within this area, there's a growing, shrinking population. And the main reason for that is that young people, they leave the region after they graduate. And on the other hand, we see that there is an eager for qualified workers and a lack of job applicants. So this actually brought us to the following research question. which livability indicators are important for nearly graduated students when they decide where to settle after their graduation. Now, to investigate, we used a study design, and you can see it over here. Let me explain. What we did was we first started with a literature review, a quick literature review based on existing literature on livability. And the findings of this literature review we used for input for the focus group discussion. So first it was like for exploratory reasons, and then the focus group discussions we wanted to use for an in-depth information. As you can see, we use focus group discussions among 8 sets, but also on Scalda with students and also with alumni. The aim for the focus group discussions was to provide input for the surveys we used among 8 set students and Scalda students to get a broader idea about, okay, so what they told us was, okay, is it for a broader sample? Well, based on the literature review, as you can see it over here, it was a bit difficult because we didn't actually know livability. What was the right definition of livability? So for instance, livability can be defined as, it can be measured by quality of life factors, such as access to fresh water, food, housing and transport, but also by healthcare, education, and a safe and stable built and natural environment. Livability is often used by policymakers to estimate how individuals value the quality of their living environment. However, for this research, what we did was we used the definition by Leidelmeyer and colleagues, and they say livability in a geographical context, livability usually refers to the degree in which the physical and social living environment fit individual requirements and desires. And it should be noted that livability is subjective, of course, and it differs per person on his or her needs. So basically, what we see is that livability consists of 3 main parts or dimensions, you can call them. It's about the physical environment, it's about the social environment and economic environment. And all these different dimensions or parts have indicators. We divided them, as you can see over here in the conceptual model. Mareike, perhaps you can add something to the indicators we introduced right now.
My apologies, I was still on mute. So we talked about the 3 dimensions, the physical environment, the social environment, and the economic environment, and basically the sub-indicators. And the sub-indicators can be seen as sort of examples of the dimensions. So if we look at the physical environment, we have nature, sport activities, cultural activities, nightlife and entertainment, religion, and infrastructure. For example, cultural activities could be going to museums, going to festivals or concerts. If we look at infrastructure, we talk more about are trains available? Can people take the bus? Are there enough bike lanes to maybe cycle to work instead of drive by car? Then we have the social environment, which consists of social cohesion, status, image of a place, and safety. And with social cohesion, they basically mean, are Are friends and family nearby? Do people have a support system they can use that lives in the same area as them? And then lastly, the economic environment is basically indicators such as job opportunities, salary, terms of employment. Are people easily finding jobs, or aren't enough places for them to apply to? So after looking at this conceptual model, we can dig a little deeper into the focus groups. And the focus groups were basically conducted to test the assumptions from the conceptual model and to add other indicators that were mentioned from these people we discussed the conceptual model with. So the focus groups were conducted among HZ students, HZ alumni, and scholar students. And overall, there were 3 real-life interactive sessions. And in total, 16 people participated across these sessions. The questions we asked, you can see them on the slide, were basically built around these indicators. So first we looked at which services and facilities people found important for their free time activities. Then we looked at which other needs influence their choice to settle somewhere after their studies. And then we dug a little deeper into the conceptual model indicators by asking which of the conceptual model indicators have an influence on where they settle after their studies, and in which order of importance they rank these indicators. The last 2 questions were mainly about, can you give an example of a place you'd like to settle in, or are there any places in the area you'd consider settling? And basically the focus groups, focus groups were built around first individually reflecting on the questions. So people wrote down what they thought was important for their free time, which other needs they had, and then they had to explain these answers to the group. And then we basically used a conceptual model to ask the same question again. Which of these indicators you see here on the slide are important for settling somewhere, and how they would rate them? So we basically asked them to give a top 3 or top 5 of indicators that were important to them. And lastly, we basically asked them to write down the important places they'd like to settle in, or give examples of the places they'd like to settle. And ultimately, this ended up in a big discussion where they could discuss the answers they wrote down and also brainstorm, are there any indicators they found missing they'd like to add to the conceptual model. And for example, during the discussions, they wanted to add a friends and family card, but ultimately we didn't add this as an extra card because for us, it fell under cohesion. So instead we used it as an example for the surveys. And other fun indicators they added was, for example, parking spaces close to home, or a supermarket close to home. And my personal favorite was mountain bike opportunities because it was so specific. I gave already a little bit of a spoiler to what my colleague Kalina is going to tell. She will present to you the end indicators we ended up with and the survey results. But before we get into that, I want you to briefly reflect on this question on your own. So basically, which livability indicator do you think is important for nearly graduated students when deciding where to live or to settle after graduation? Maybe it won't be as you imagine it to be. And I will give the microphone to my colleague Kalina now.
Thank you. Thank you for this nice introduction. Let's go to see what the results of the survey were. Maybe just short wrap up. So we were, as you have seen in the design of the study, we started with a literature review. Based on that literature review, we had a very nice overview of what kind of indicators we actually might expect. We tried to validate it with our focus groups. So we had several focus groups where we could find out whether or not these indicators ought to be found. And as well, the students could add their own indicators, which Mareike just talked about. Next step was to validate those indicators among a bigger group of students. So what we did, we tried to put all the indicators that were already named with the previous focus groups. We named them all and we asked questions to the students about the importance of these indicators, so how important they are. But before I will show you the results, I just wanted to show how many students, or what the sample description was. We were working together with a different university who spread their survey also among their students. And so we had 165 students among our university students, and there were also 126 students from the other university. I will not dig too much deeper into the really sample description because that's not really the point here. I don't want to bore you with that, but let's go and see what the students really found important in their choice of settling down. Here we have a very long overview of plenty of indicators which were indicated with a focus group. So you can see that there are all of them. But when you look at the red strip almost somewhere in the middle of this diagram, you can see what actually were the most important indicators for the students to settle down somewhere. They were talking about safe environment on the first place, was the most important and for the majority of students. They were talking about good terms of employment, salary, career opportunities, so indicators that have something to do with their future career. Employment opportunities. There are also several indicators that have something to do with the easiness or availability of the work and easiness to move around the place. So, for instance, being close to the supermarkets, having a choice of good housing, a different kind of housing, not only cheap housing but as well expensive housing. Also being close to the nature, good bicycle tracks, what Mareike already said, were some of the indicators that were scoring higher. Now, this is an important question, of course. You can dig deeper into these indicators. I will not go through all of them, but you will have this presentation afterwards, so you can take a look and see what really the indicators were and how important they actually were in our region for our students. Now, the second question that we found very important was whether or not these indicators were actually present in our region. Because in this way, we could actually see which of these indicators are present and compare it to the importance of this indicator. So as you see in this figure or diagram, you can see that there are some of these indicators present or less present, but of course, when we look at this separately from how important they are, they don't really say that much to us. So Mareike show us the second slide, which we find more important, which is really overwhelming because now we can compare the indicators not only on the fact that they are present and that these are the orange ones. These are the indicators that are present in Region Zeeland, and the blue diagram shows how important they are. Now, again, it's a bit difficult to make something out of this, so I will try to zoom on the most important indicators, but those indicators who are not actually present So based on the previous diagram, we can zoom in and take a look on what were the most important indicators and what kind of number or rating they get from the students in region Zeeland. Okay, we can take a look at the first indicator, which was very important and scored 4.5. But if we ask the students whether or not this indicator is present in region Zeeland, then this number is much lower. It's still not very low, right? Because 3.7 is above the average, but we would expect something more, right? So the difference between the two is just too big to make sure that the students get what they really want in this region. The same goes for good terms of employment, salary, career opportunities, employment opportunities, as well as parking spots and choice between expensive and more or cheap housing. So just all of these, the most important indicators, are not actually present or not enough present in region Zeeland. Let me zoom to another part of the diagram, which are the indicators which as well were rated as quite important, and they were also scored very high in the presence of these indicators in region Zeeland. We call these factors unique selling proposition for region Zeeland, because that's where Zeeland is really excelling in the perception of students. Those indicators really exist in the region, but also they score high on importance. These are close to nature. These are also the image of the city, which is a positive image. Also the opportunities to cycle around with good cycling tracks. There are lots of cafes and restaurants where students can go and enjoy. As well, if you want to settle and have children, students found region Zeeland as a child-friendly environment. There are also many sport facilities in the region. So that would be our unique selling proposition. Yes. As you probably maybe forgot from our slide somewhere in the beginning, where we were talking about the design of this research, we not only did the literature study, we also did the focus groups with a lot of students, national students in the region. Then we have done the surveys, and we also thought about international students. Our idea was that the results of this research would not be the same for international students, because they have, of course, different history behind them, different backgrounds, and they can look with a totally different eye on the region in which they're studying. So this was not the focus of our study, but we really wanted just, to dig a bit deeper and give a little insight already in how the perception of this region and importance of this indicators would be for international students. So of course we cannot really generalize these results, but this gives us already a little idea of that there might be some difference in this perception. First important difference was in how the students were perceiving the indicator of safety. While our students found that the safety is not maybe very high in region Zeeland, was not too low, but as well it wasn't very high as they would want to. The international students found region Zeeland as a very safe place to be. Of course, we have students from different kind of regions. For instance, European European students were thinking that it was less secure or less safe than in the region that they were coming from. So it really depends on the background and your nationality. Second thing that they added, which is also not very unlogical, is mentality and attitude. That was a new indicator for us. Of course, for international students, it's really important how the things are going there and how easy they are to in terms of availability in their own language or in the language that they can speak, being English, for most of the international students. So to feel good in a specific region outside of their own country, it is interesting that they can speak fluently with other people, or governmental institutions in the different language, and as well as feeling integrated or feeling safe or feeling welcome in the country where they are studying. So that was something that they mentioned as an important indicator. And now let me wrap up some important conclusions and what kind of recommendations we might have for region Zeeland, which we already, the results, of course, of this study were presented to the local policy makers, where we already said that there are some indicators in which region Zeeland is not really excelling and might want to excel better, so to have a better perception among the students. Now, we don't really know yet whether or not it's just the perception, and it's might not be really true that these factors or these indicators that were shown as not existing or less existing, that they are important in region Zeeland. It's just a perception, or is it something that really does not exist? From policymakers, they could say like, yeah, but we have plenty of jobs, but we just don't even have people to fill them in. While the students would say, yes, but there are not enough career opportunities for us, or the employment possibilities are not good enough. So there is a certain gap between what the policymakers think and what the students might think, and that's something that is worth investigating. Is it just a perception, or is it really a lack of these things in this region? A second important recommendation would be to focus really on these important but as well present in the region Zeeland indicators, which we called unique selling propositions, such as existence of being nature in these beautiful region, cycling tracks, sport facilities, schools, and child-friendly environment, because this is what students really value and find important, but it's also something that is really there and is very special for region Zeeland. So that will be something for us to focus on in marketing activities, in the PR of region Zeeland. We also recommend more cooperation between different kind of partners within region Zeeland, with different stakeholders, so that they come up with this unique selling proposition, so that they come up with ideas on how to strengthen this this view and how to work together on those indicators which might not be enough present within the region. And of course, we advise further monitoring of what we have done. I think it was a really interesting research to do with very interesting results, but of course it might differ. It might differ for different groups of students, as we saw already between international and national students. We might want to dig deeper into the differences between international and national students, because as now we just had a few interviews, and that not really has to be generalizable, but as well it can differ from year to year for students who are just starting, or finishing these studies. With this, I want to thank you all for listening to us. I hope you found it insightful, interesting. Of course, if you have some questions, then we are really open now to answer them. If you come and visit this presentation later on and you still have some questions, herewith you have our contact, so you can always contact us via email or whatever else possibility. And the last but not least, here with you have a little bit more information about our research group. Who are we? What kind of research we do? You can see some of our projects there, and as well, you can always contact us for more information. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much for that. That was really very, very interesting and very, very applicable to a lot of the work we're doing in our project. So I know that the students will be watching you, although probably more in the recorded version, because it's going to be essential training for them in the course of the projects that are starting just now. I wondered, have you published somewhere the results of this study and also the questionnaire? Is that available anywhere?
Ingrid, maybe you can answer, because Ingrid was our project lead. She was spreading, of course, the information around the region. So there were interviews, there were local magazines who were publishing the results. Of course, we have shown this presentation to our local partner, who was an advisor of this project. So yes, in our region, the results of the study were spread out, not that much, I think, internationally, which we are doing now, hopefully.
Right, because what we would like to do is really use some of the ideas that you've presented in order to measure livability in our region. Right?
Absolutely.
So I wondered if your questionnaire is available.
Yeah, it's in Dutch at this point.
Yeah,
but
it's in Dutch,
actually it is.
Yeah.
Of course, we can send you the report. What we did was it was in Dutch.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah.
However, we can translate it, of course.
No. It's okay. If you can send it to us in Dutch, or maybe if you can send it by email, we will add it to the bibliography of our project.
Yeah,
and
we would.
Does your report actually contain the questionnaire as such, or?
Yeah, the questionnaire itself.
Yeah.
Also, what we did was, like Mareike also explained, the focus group discussions were in Dutch. However, what we did was we really wanted to have an idea about what international students thought about also the livability indicators.
Yeah.
So we translated all the indicators into English, so that could be very useful, but also the items Kalina discussed and elaborated on. So that's possible to share, of course.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to add that it's something that is typical in this region. So that's why we did the focus groups, so to trigger them to think about these indicators that might be really typical only for them, and that might be also different for different countries. So I would definitely advise to first do the focus groups to see whether they really point to these indicators that we found out in our sample, and then you can add them into the questionnaire. Because like now this questionnaire was really for the national students, but when we did a few interviews, we saw that there are new indicators coming up, which could be added to the survey again, right? So it's really always this the two of them that make a difference.
I think that's a very valid point and very useful for us, because obviously our region is completely different. It has some different problems, more to do with mountains, which I think you don't have.
Exactly. Yeah,
right.
Probably that would be something important, right?
Yes,
going for a hike, or enjoying the nature, but in a different way that here, having a sea or a cycling opportunities, that will be something
also
that will...
safety, right? Safety and driving on in the winter and things like that. These are factors that we are more concerned about, perhaps.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think you're completely right, and it will be really nice to try to replicate that study, but to do it in a completely different region and see what different indicators came up.
Yeah, I think like Kalina said, the study design, like we used some of the livability dimensions by Leidelmeier, but it was very interesting to conduct the focus group discussions, because we found out more about exactly what are those dimensions, the three environment livability dimensions, and in combination with the focus group discussions and the surveys, we find out, well, it was very interesting, because, for instance, like you said, safety or even a mountain bike experience, as I already told you all about. It's, you think, what about mountain bike experiences? But it's more connected to specifically the region we're in.
Yeah, yeah, that's what makes it actually very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anyway, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Been fascinating, and this is actually the last seminar in our series, but we will be keeping all the seminars on the webpage, and in fact I will be then publicizing the availability of the seminars on the YouTube site. And because our students this year are just starting up, there will be essential training, I think, for everybody who's starting a project this year. So Antonio will make sure that they are all connected by links on the YouTube site, and we will be able to look at this again, and then probably we will have questions for you.
That's
But
all
that
welcome.
will be ongoing.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio, for helping us with this.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you.
Goodbye.